Okay. Well, welcome to the I Got Fired podcast and video blog. For those of you who can't join us on YouTube, you can join us on our podcast. So we do have an audio and a video version available. This is a podcast for people who've been fired or afraid that they might be. My name is Tom Spiggle. I am founder of the Spiggle Law Firm, where we represent people who've been fired or that might be. I'm also the author of You're Pregnant, You're Fired. And I am thrilled to have with me today Jason Levin, who is the founder of Ready, Set, Launch, who is a career coach and counselor. And Jason, I will turn it over to you to tell folks a little bit more about you and where they can find you.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Tom. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. So like you said, I have my own career and outplacement coaching business called Ready, Set, Launch, LLC. I've been in business now for a little bit over 8 years now. And the reason I got into this is that I remember when my father lost the only job that he had during the recession of 89, 90. And so you could say for the last 25 or 30 years, I've really been interested in the hows and whys on people transitioning. Why are people succeeding? Why are people being let go? And then when they're let go, well, where is it that they go? And so a lot of my work is helping people either move up in their organizations or make that transition into their next step. And for some folks, it's even into retirement. So that's my world, and I really enjoy it.
That's great. Well, you are the perfect guest for our topic today, which is what do you do when you've gotten the pink slip? Right. You've gone to meet with HR and they slid the severance agreement across the desk, and it's a monumental change in your life, big decisions to be made. And obviously on my end, working with employees who've been fired and providing them legal services, we're sort of looking backwards. Like, how do you clean that up? How do you first make sure it's a good severance agreement, make sure that the dollar figure is right and your legal rights are protected. And you are more of the forward-looking piece, like what happens next. And I always find in representing folks who are in that category that it helps to have both pieces. Because if you are constantly locked in a battle and looking backwards, and that's an important piece to take care of, and you ignore the forward-looking piece, then you're losing out on what can be a growth opportunity. Nobody likes to get fired. It's never one thing we put on our bucket list, but it is an opportunity. It's a break. It's a chance to to get to a better place. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. So before let's say somebody's been fired. They've just got the severance agreement. They've come into my office, and I am saying to them, we want to provide you with legal services. We want the things we can do to help you. I'd like to also see you think about your next steps and where you're going. You should see a career counselor. And one of my questions for you is that sort of a nebulous term, because there are people who do resumes, there are people who do outplacement, there are people who do all various sorts of things. Can you kind of tell us what the marketplace looks like and what people should be looking for?
Sure. So, and you're right. There are multiple types of terms that are used in the marketplace. So typically career counselors are the types of folks that help you figure out what you want to do or what you want to do next. Typically they'll use some type of assessment that generates options, and then they say, well, okay, here's the options in front of you. Career coaches tend to be more tactical. Some career coaches write resumes, some career coaches don't. Some just write the resume and say, okay, you're off to the races. When it comes to outplacement is essentially career coaching paid for by the employer. And so when you're negotiating your severance agreements, one of the things that is an option for folks is to have outplacement embedded in the severance agreement. And that could be for a certain duration of time, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, depending on, what type of options that you have. And essentially, then you get assigned either a firm or a coach to help you with that transition. So that's pretty much the three, when you think of career counselor, career coach, outplacement, what that looks like.
And do you do a little bit of all of that? What is your, I know you have done outplacement before, but what's your focus?
Yeah, so I'd say that I play in equally in those lanes. So it's not uncommon that organizations are working with me after they've done their severance agreements, and I'm on their coaching list, and they say, Jason, we're bringing you in for an outplacement engagement, help this person transition. The career coaching, career counseling side can play into that outplacement engagement with a professional or an executive. And then there are individuals that are looking to help or that are looking for career help. And so I could be working with them on figuring out their next step and or executing on that. So whether it be figuring out the types of employers they should be going after, working on their messaging, the mock interview prep, all the way through to negotiation and close. But some folks even retain me to help them with their integration, the first 90 days, 120 days. How do you think about your personal brand in that next organization? So.
Got it. Well, let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say that we've got a woman, we'll call her Jane. She's a senior vice, well, she's a junior vice president of marketing at a mid-sized company. She's been there 7 years, been working her way up the ladder, has been doing very well, building a reputation for herself in marketing. And the company is purchased and they get a new C-suite. And one of the new bosses doesn't like the fact that she has young children and likes to, and leaves when she can to go to Little League and that sort of thing. And she's fired. Right. So she comes to me. So she's come to Spiggle. We're taking care of her, the legal issues and trying to help her evaluate what the value of her legal claims are and making sure that the severance looks good from a legal angle, non-disparagement and all that. We're getting that straightened out, and I send her to you. She comes to you and she's like, okay, Jason, like this is, I kind of get my wits about me now and I got to figure out what to do next. I'm worried about how I describe to prospective employers. And I'm also trying to think about, is this an opportunity for me to, I've always kind of toyed with the idea of opening up my own PR agency. Is this the right step for me to do that? What would you do with somebody in that situation?
Sure. So, for me, the first thing I would make sure is that they've fully processed the layoff, meaning that that they're in a mindset where they're ready to go to market. So that means that they've gotten any negativity, any venom out against their former employer, that they've tied the bow nicely, that they've reached out to their former colleagues and said, listen, I've been transitioned. I want to keep in touch. Thanks so much. All of those kinds of things. Then we can evaluate, and I often talk about the relationship between career management and wealth management. And so for me, I'm wondering how much cash on hand do they have in terms of expenses that allows them to say, all right, well, some folks are really good savers and they have a year or 2 or 3 years of cash on hand, and that allows them to give them a whole host of options and choices. If they say, listen, after my severance goes, I'm going to be filing for bankruptcy, then that says to me, okay, we have to do a really fast job search. Mm-hmm. And so depending on that will also help me go through, the different phases. So defining where you want to go, whether that's opening up your own PR shop like you're talking about, or going towards an organization, managing that message, and then it becomes a function of, okay, reaching out to their relationship base and getting the necessary and getting into weekly goals. So that would probably be something that I would do in the first conversation, and then see from there, what are the levers that she can use to either start her own PR agency or kick off that job search that she is going to need to do.
Got it. Let's say she's got, but let's say all the legal bows are tied up. She's going to get the severance. The non-disparagement is all. In between savings and her severance, she can make it 8 months.
Okay.
And she decides. Let's say she decides. Okay, I've decided I'm going to hold off on the opening my own PR thing. I'm going to go back, back into the workforce. Just a couple of questions. How do and let's say she says, look, I although I'm a marketing person, cobbler's children are last to have shoes. I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to my own LinkedIn profile. I have one, but it's got a little bit of cobwebs on it. I know there's this thing called personal brand. I don't really have a sense of how to build one. So I've got that. And then also, how do I talk to prospective employers about what do I say to them about the fact that I was let go? And let's just, with the former employer, it's all agreed that the employer will say, everybody's decided to go a different direction. The employer's going to back her up to that extent.
And there's this notion of getting laid off. And if you ever want to take the most confident person in the world, lay them off, and then, you've just essentially punched them in the stomach.
Right.
The way that I categorize layoffs, one is the fit layoff. So the fit layoff is essentially you no longer fit in this organization, and that typically is because what you're describing, that there's a new executive in and they want their own people. The second is a budget layoff, where the organization is just making cutbacks. And in 2008, 2009, 2010, you saw a lot of budget layoffs. The third is a competency layoff, where you're just not performing to your expectation and you're being laid off for cause. So anytime there's either a budget layoff or a fit layoff, there's nothing wrong in just saying that there's new management and they're going in a different direction and you parted ways. I think that folks can be honest, because if you're not honest about it, then people are going to be looking for, well, what's behind that? What's the red flag? And when you're talking about prospective employers, before you go after prospective employers, really the first step is being able to work on that message with the folks that you already know, the people that are in your camp, those mentors, those former colleagues, those former vendors that want to see you succeed. And you can kind of work through how you develop that and talk that through. And then as they begin to introduce you, then you've already got a really great message on why you were laid off, what you can bring to the table, and what you're looking for. And then that allows you to, you're talking about personal brand, then be able to talk about your value in your LinkedIn profile, in your resume. And if there were things that you did while you were in marketing, that should show within your LinkedIn profile throughout. If you have links, if you have videos, if you have blogs, if you've got social media, to bring that all through the profile so that you've got a lot of accomplishments that you can talk about. So
how has social media changed the landscape, or has it much, for job searching? I just, when I read things or see things, on my own LinkedIn profile, I know there are all these tips for how to use LinkedIn. You can start various groups. There are different ways you can use it to, because obviously it's still all personal connections, right? We're
right.
In a connection world. You're talking about using your network and getting in front of people. How much is, let me ask you this way. What are the best practices for using social media without that becoming a beast that eats up too much of your time, when you should be out just, gumshoe, going to networking events and meeting people face to face?
Well, I think that what LinkedIn has changed is knowing who the people are in that organization and which relationships that you have that can help you get there. So before you even think about LinkedIn, it really becomes an analog strategy of, okay, what are the organizations, what are the roles that I think I want to go after? Then you feed that into LinkedIn and be able to leverage the people that you already know and to get them to make those introductions. If you don't have those relationships, at the very least, you can see who the hiring executive is, who the recruiter is. So I find LinkedIn quite valuable in that respect. It's true you can spend, hours upon hours, on LinkedIn. I am a LinkedIn user. I think it's a great platform. But in reality, I think that the platform is there to see who you can connect with. And then once you're connected with them, you have their email address. So I know that a lot of folks prefer, some prefer to be to actually set up things on LinkedIn through their internal email system. I know a lot of folks just rather to be emailed directly. And frankly, I think that's a better use of your time. Yeah. So once you have these analog targets, you're using LinkedIn to connect with people that can help you make those introductions, then you're about the rate of following up, setting up your coffees, and getting those what's known as informational interviews, these informal conversations that could turn to formal around what it's like to work there, what openings, what's going on, things that you're not going to find on the web.
I've read some things that, and tell me about how prevalent this is, that people are having problems getting to people within an organization because there is this firewall of, they're using bots and AI to screen resumes, and there's just, all these organizations are funneling people back to submitting your resume, and you never know what happens to it. You never know how the decisions are being made. Do you see it happening? And if it's happening, is that just the way it is? Is there a workaround?
Well, I mean, what you're talking about is that the folks on the other side are screening resumes, right? And if the organization has an employer referral program where an employee gets a bonus, then there's a better opportunity that resume will actually be looked at if you're actually getting a referral internally. There's something in the industry known as posting and praying, where folks are, using the computer and they're using the online applications to get their resumes in, and they think they're job seeking. And for me, if you're spending too much time posting and praying, it's kind of like eating a donut. It makes you feel good, but it really doesn't do anything for you. Mm-hmm. And so what I try to work with folks on, because on the other side, and it depends on how the other side is screening these resumes, is that you really need to be working with somebody inside the organization to help them pass your resume directly to either the recruiter that's managing it or the hiring manager directly. And then from there, yes, organizations are using AI. Yes, they're using specific applicant tracking systems to get certain resumes in the door. But again, you want to keep it one-to-one so that you give yourself a better shot of actually getting an interview.
Right. And in terms of getting in, you mentioned the employee referral program. Any other ways, like, using LinkedIn, like you said, to reach out directly to the hiring manager? Or do hiring managers get tired of that? I mean, I guess it depends on the position, but I could see, like, hey, don't reach out to me on LinkedIn. Like, do you find people take offense to that, or is that still a productive way to approach it?
Well, if you're going after a sales role, then I think if you're going after a sales role and you can show that you can just call the hiring manager, then, I think that's a good thing. I think it's important to at least try to get an introduction. And I think that's a safer way to go. I think there's no hard and fast rules on reaching out to hiring managers. I know plenty of hiring managers, and they said, listen, I have candidates reaching out to me directly. Mm-hmm. And typically it's either via the employer referral program or someone in the organization that they value more. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the best use of time. So, yeah. And how a job seeker, like, if I'm a job seeker, I'm spending at least 80% of my time trying to find employees and organizations to talk to about open roles. Got
it. Let me back up and ask you, so let me give you a situation that's not uncommon for folks that we represent. So somebody's at an organization, let's back up to my hypothetical. She's doing well there, they get a new C-suite, and it's not just that it's a bad fit, it's that the CEO's a bad actor. Like, he doesn't, like, he wants a 25-year-old guy in there who you can play golf with and who will work till 8 o'clock at night. And he's basically discriminating against her. And she raises it, she hires us, she raises it with HR, and regrettably, as is sometimes the case, rather than helping, it becomes clear that she's going to be managed out of the organization. And then we come in and we negotiate an exit for her that's rocky at first, but at least, as you say, it's tied up in a bow. We get a severance, we get everything signed off on. But it's, she doesn't have anybody, and maybe legally because of the non-disparagement agreement, let's say the company says, okay, we'll give you a neutral reference, name, rank, and serial number if somebody calls. That's all we're saying. We're not going to say anything bad about you, but we're not going to say anything good about you either. how do you, what's the best way to deal with that? I know you, I mean, I get, we get that inquiry not infrequent. It's like, okay, what should I tell them that how this happened, or should I, let's say that she was fired. Should I tell them that I was fired? How would you handle that?
Well, I think there's two things there. One is how the separation happened, and then two, who are your references? Because, and for me, I'm more concerned about the references than talking about how the separation happened. Because I think in 2019, I think people will not really get the real story. And it's really not up to you to tell the real story, because if you're discriminated against, you don't want to tell a future employer that you've been discriminated against, because that'll be a red flag.
Right.
For me, I think the most important thing is, okay, when you look at the totality of the people that you've worked with in that organization, whether it be peers, whether it be vendors, who can go to bat for you and give the really great reference, because there's going to come a point where in the new job offer, well, the job offer is not going to happen until they can talk to 2 or 3 people.
Right, sure.
And so for me, I think that you want to button that down and do that quickly, so that if you're still in the office and you're like, listen, I'm leaving, I really enjoyed working with you. And if it's not so clearly it's not going to be the CEO that wants to have the 25-year-old guy golfing, but you might have a peer that really enjoyed working with you, that sat with you on the leadership team. You brought a lot to the table, and or some of your direct reports. I was literally just having coffee with somebody that I've been working with, and she got laid off. Her direct reports loved her so much, they started job seeking because they didn't want to be under the new leadership of this other person. And ever since that person left, and this was fairly recently, 2 people have already gone.
Wow.
And so that already speaks to how, and I think leaders care about that. Especially if you're in either a mid-level role or an executive role, if you're able to retain and grow others, then getting references from your direct report is also a really good thing.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm working with folks on the transition out. And then, however you talk about the separation, they don't need to know that there's an agreement there. It's just, things just didn't work out.
Right. And it's gotten to be like, this happens, right? High-level folks get fired for good reason, for bad reason. I saw, I don't know if you saw this article circulate a while back. It was an interesting one from Harvard Business Review about how a lot of the top performers at one point in their career were fired,
Right.
And the point the article raises was exactly what you were just saying, that a lot of them, went on to move on to bigger and better things, but the way they did it was relying on their network, falling back on the people, on the reputation they built for a number of years, and then they use that to springboard to a new position. But I guess my question to you is right, I don't know. If I were hiring somebody and I got wind, you can kind of read between the lines. Okay, this maybe didn't end so great. I wouldn't, right? It happens, right? I wouldn't automatically be like, oh my God, we can't hire this person because things didn't work out in their last job. Yeah,
and that's when I'm mock interviewing people. One of the first questions I'm asking is, okay, why'd you leave? And you're talking about the language. I'm more interested in the body language. And so some people have like a head tick every single time, or they're blinking their eyes too much, or they're talking too quickly, or they get all movie.
Right.
And so for me, it's not only the language that they're using, but they're the nonverbals. The body language shows that yes, it didn't work out, but they're calm about it, and that gives hiring folks more. It just raises less red flags, and so that you can answer that question, and then you can actually get to the real interview.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. It gets back to your point earlier, that you have to have processed it yourself, right?
Right.
As long as you have done the internal work and you don't feel defensive about it,
right.
Personally in your heart, then you're not gonna, because I think that's what happens, right? I can see that happening with me, that I'm still worked up about this and I'm concentrating too hard on how to, how to put, lipstick on a pig, so to speak, when I'm talking to somebody about it. And your body,
Right.
right? You might be worried about the words, but like you said, your movements, one doth protest too much, sort of thing, even if non-verbally. So if you've kind of reached a calmness on yourself about that and realized, hey, this happens. This happens to people who were going to become very successful. Then, but I guess the first thing is to be aware that that is there. Be aware that you're thinking that, and have these body movements and these tells that people realize, oh, this doesn't seem to be okay with you.
Right. And when I'm working with folks, I'm really encouraging daily activities to make sure that they're doing things that bring them energy, whether it be yoga or mindfulness or exercise or volunteering with, causes that they care about. And then that allows for the person to be their most genuine self. Mm-hmm. I don't want people job seeking 8, 10, 12 hours a day. You job seek 4 to 6 hours a day, and then you do things that make you human. Because at the end of the day, people hire people, and people hire people they like. And so if you're doing the daily activities of processing the layoff, doing things that bring you energy, then your informational conversations are going to go better. When they convert to real interviews, it's going to go better. And when you go way deep in the process and you're one of the final 2 and you land, it's because you've been able to manage your own energy throughout that process.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Do you ever get the problem that people have in that situation is not with themselves, but with their friends and family, right? Like,
sure.
You just been fired and you're going to yoga? I wish I could go to yoga. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing also, is that you want to, with the people close to you, you want to make sure that they're giving out a supportive message. And if someone's going to yoga, I mean, how long does yoga take? I mean, yoga can be 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you're going to a yoga class, that's an hour. It's no different than going to the gym. And people go to gym all the time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you can say to your family members is that my well-being and my health is going to be important to me while I'm job seeking, and then even in my new job. And so you got to watch for those downers, close family members or friends. And if you feel like they're being too much of a downer, then you got to tune them out.
Yeah.
And say, listen, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm feeling a lot of negativity, and I just don't need this at this moment in time.
Yeah.
So,
in a tight labor market like this one, do you ever have the problem, almost the opposite problem, where people get panicked and they jump at a job that may not be a good one for them?
So you do get you do get the folks that are like, all right, here's my first offer. Should I take it? And so then we work through the pros and cons of, okay, here's what we initially described on what you're looking for, and where does that fit? And so it is, for some people, they have the recognition, oh my God, here's my first offer. I don't know if I should take it or not because it's my first offer. But then really, I think when I'm seeing folks that don't have the savings runway, they have to take it.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's the big driver. If you don't have the savings, then you're not going to be able to say whether you want it or not. You're going to need to take the job.
Yeah.
So, which is unfortunate.
I know you're not a financial advisor, and if the answer is to go to see your financial advisor, but do you have any insight on, I've got a 401k, should I, understanding there are tax penalties, tap into that? I mean, I guess what I'm thinking is, you've been fired, let's say you're a mid-level executive, here's an opportunity for you to make a better career choice. And it's a risk, I understand, but is it worth it if you have to turn down that first job offer that seems mediocre, to say, hypothetically, take 2 months out of your 401k to get to the job offer that you want? I know that's a little bit out of your field, but do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Make that
I think my answer, and I say this often when I'm working with folks, if they don't have a financial advisor, you should get one.
Yeah.
Because having that financial advisor can help you make those kinds of decisions, and that's well within their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So that's where I am. There are a range of things that I do. I know that it's important to have a good financial balance sheet, but at a certain point, it's go to the expert.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I know, just because I've worked together before, that you have a spreadsheet that you use for job hunting activities. Tell me about that. Why do you use it? What's the import of that?
So for me, I think it's really important to have a structured, organized place to put in all of your information. And so I've developed that in an Excel file with multiple tabs. The first one's a checklist. Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? To help people keep their mind focused. The next tab is, all right, what are your employer targets? And then there are a series of tabs that allow people to write in the people's contact information, what they talked about, dates of follow-up, did they refer you anybody? I have a tab for job postings. And the reason I created this shell, and this is not uncommon. I mean, I like mine, but people have others. Is that you're going to get a whole host of conversations. If you don't have a central place where you can be tracking all of this, you're going to forget who you spoke with, when they said to get back to you, and a lot of job seeking is in the minutia, is in the follow-up.
Right.
And you're talking to somebody. I love I find joy in the mundane, and following up is kind of mundane stuff. But you know what? If they say get back to me in 2 weeks, or I have an out of office or whatever, then you need to be setting a whole host of reminders so that you're talking to yourself throughout this process, so that you know what you need to be doing next. And so that's why anybody that I'm working with, they get the Excel tracker. We start using it to communicate with one another, and it helps them. The more that they fill out the Excel tracker, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing a lot of work here, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and it may help you with that family member who gives you grief about going to yoga. You're like, hey man, my Excel spreadsheet, you got one of these?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, even, when I do networking, as part of building my practice, it's a lot to remember. I mean, you can go to a networking event and, meet 8 or 10 people and walk away with 8 or 10 cards. And 3 days later, you can barely remember who they were or what they said. Like, it really does take a level of discipline. And you say it's unusual to have that spreadsheet, but yours is the first one I had ever seen. So, I think it speaks to the utility of having a professional like you work with somebody, because I think, and I just know if I were in that situation, I would get out and do the work, but I'd have either a virtual or a real shoebox full of stuff that I'd be thumbing through and be like, oh yeah, I think I'll talk to this guy and I can't remember why.
And you talk about discipline, because that's what a job search is about. It's doing the right types of activities, doing them correctly, and then repeating the process. And so, and too often, I think people will just go off their own memory. And if you're not, so if you, let's say you go to a coffee and you come back, the first thing I'm doing is responding to that person with the next steps, and then I'm putting in my tracking file the key notes from that person, as well as a date to follow up on. And if you have that rigor, those are the types of people that get jobs.
Yeah.
There is a process to this. And so job seeking is both art and science. The science piece is the rigor, the conversations, the tracking, and those kinds of things. And then the art is the insanity of a hiring decision around likability and fit.
Yeah.
But if you're giving yourself more opportunities to get in front of people, your message is down, you're doing the right types of follow-up, they're introducing you to others, then you're creating more options for you on getting into interviews, anytime that you're interviewing, you're clearly advancing in your job search. And then you need to be taking notes throughout. And then you're in a place where you're getting closer to that job offer and actually starting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Let me back up and say, that's great technique for when you've decided your target, where you're going. Let's say we're back up earlier in the process, and I'm trying to decide whether or not, back to our hypothetical, Jane, she's trying to decide, do I open up the PR shop? Do I find to go back into a more traditional career path? How does one make that decision? Like, what color is your parachute sort of exercise? Like,
sure.
How would you advise somebody at that sort of crossroads?
Well, if this has been a lifelong interest to have their own business, or something around, you feel an entrepreneurial urge, and for me, there's nothing wrong in having a side hustle anyway, as long as it's not competing with, your full-time job. Sure. But recognize, I think people forget in entrepreneurship that sales is such an important function of that. And so if you by nature do not like sales, and even, when I say sales, I think of consultative sales, which is listening, but still there's a process to that. If you don't enjoy that, then you really shouldn't be out on your own. Or maybe you should partner with somebody that does like sales so that they can bring in the work and you can do the work. But, I think for me, it goes back to where do you want work to fit into your overall life? And so either you can find that flexibility in something that you create, or you can be looking specifically at organizations that are parent-friendly, that are friendly to people of diverse backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And you will find those lists, in those specific types of periodicals and newsletters that are, best places to work, that, get these awards. But at the end of the day, I think what's also important as, you're thinking about your own values is the person you're reporting to. So, and it's cliched, but, people don't leave organizations, they leave a bad boss. Right. And so when you're interviewing, if you are clicking with your future boss, then there's something that your instincts are telling you right. Yeah. But throughout the interview process, and you start hearing certain things that might be a red flag, you should really trust your instincts and trust those prior experiences that you had to say, listen, something's off about this person. But I'm glad you brought up, taking a look at yourself and your own self-awareness, because, you really need to say to yourself, what is it that I want out of my next role? What do I want out of my next opportunity? And what is it going to give me both professionally and personally? And does it fit into the lifestyle that I want right now? So that's what I would work through with folks.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, that a lot of it is who you work for, not so much what you're doing. I mean, I just think of classmates of mine from law school who, have developed quite, robust and practice areas that they enjoy, but it was really the way they picked it was they joined a firm and it was who they meshed with, right? It was the practice, right. It was the personalities, it was that drove the direction more than an intellectual, do I like antitrust or do I like this? I mean, I think that needs to be part of the conversation in your head, but really a lot of it was, they found their tribe within the firm, and their tribe happened to have selected a particular practice area. And I think the genius of that too is also you tend to hang out with people that work the way you like to work. And if you're happy in a particular practice area, then you are more likely to be happy in a particular practice area. Not just the law. I mean, obviously that can be true of many, many jobs.
Yeah, because if you're working with people and for people that are interested in your development, and it's not just lip service, they're actually interested in growing you, then those are the types of people that you want to be around. And And as you're going through that interview process, you can be talking with their direct reports and you can ask them, what are they like as a leader and as a manager? And everybody keeps on saying, no, they really are. They do care about your professional development. Then that's pretty important. That's pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we've got a few minutes left here, and I'm sure you can answer this question in 9 minutes, which is older workers. And by older, somebody who's going to be turning next month, entering that category, in the mid-50s and above.
Right.
There's a perception, you will know better than I, that it is more difficult to find a job in that age group. Is that true? And if so, are there different considerations that somebody in that age bracket needs to give to their job search?
So I think it goes back. So yeah, I will say yes. Does ageism exist? It does exist. Is anybody going to tell you that? No.
I'll be a lot busier if I right down and say it.
And with any ism, unfortunately, that exists.
Right.
And if I could do something about the system, I would. But you do have the isms, and ageism is one of them. What I try to do with the folks that I'm working with is to help them condense their stories so that you're not the 50 plus person, waxing on about, what the Wang computer looked like.
Right. Right. I remember the Apple IIe. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you don't want to be going into a tech startup and talking about Wang computers. You want to show that, if you're, on the tech side, that you're talking about the most current up to speed architecture or coding languages or whatever that looks like. And so I think one, it's about getting your messaging down and being able to, I'm a huge fan of summarizing. As somebody that has ADD, I need my folks to get to the point. And so that actually helps me in my work, which is pretty cool. And, I'm a Jew from New Jersey, so I love a good story too.
A good short, succinct story.
Yeah. So, but I think what's also important in all of this is the ability to tell your own story. And so if you have 30 or 35 years of experience, you don't have to say, well, I graduated college. And after I graduated college, often when I'm working with folks 50 plus, it's typically, all right, here's chapter 1, here's chapter 2, here's chapter 3, and let's condense each one into 30 to 45 seconds. So it allows for the person to understand your own trajectory, your own motivations, your own accomplishments. And then from there, it's just becoming a function of drawing out that most relevant experience. So if somebody's 50 plus, I'm usually drawing out their 10 to 15 most recent years of work experience and then condensing the earlier stuff. And so that they are really able to talk about their more recent, more relevant work experience. So when I have folks with gray hair, more than I do, that's typically what I'm working with on.
Right. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, Jason, I really appreciate you joining us. It's been a fascinating conversation. Tell people again how they can find you, and if they're, why and when should someone hire you?
So my website is www.readysetlaunch.net. My email is jason@readysetlaunch.net. Folks should consider hiring me if they are looking for more out of their career, whether it's at their current organization and they feel like they want to get a promotion. If they are looking for something new and want to transition out, they can certainly hire someone like me. If someone is caught in a very high-level interview process or need to get their messaging down or work on their personal brand, then they should definitely hire me. And so, I think it's important, when you're hiring somebody that you fit with the person, you agree with their methodology, and that they are able to articulate to you past success. And so hiring a career coach or an outplacement coach is a good use of time and investment. And if folks are interested in having a conversation with me, any career coach will do an off-clock consult. So, and that's what I do also.
Yeah, well, this is great. Well, I appreciate it. This has been fascinating. I've learned a lot. even though I can use with my own clients. Of course, I'm more than happy to send them to you. I think it's really important. I mean, from my perspective, that when people have hit that rocky patch, that's when we see them in our office is, yeah, you gotta patch this up. Let us help you with that. But you have to turn and look forward, because that's what's going to give you hope. That's what's going to give you purpose. And I think a lot of the tips you provided, and just as importantly, the structure with how to go through that process, which is, I think, a lot of people lack. They've got the will, they've got the idea, they just haven't done it in a number of years, and they don't have the structure and the tools to be able to do it. And I appreciate you sharing those with us. So
my pleasure, Tom. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. And we talk about structure. I mean, I like to use the metaphor of bumper bowling. I'm the bumpers that help you make sure that you hit the pins, right? Because you're right that you have a whole host of experiences and skills and relationships and things like that. But you just, it's good to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, so that, when you're able to get in that right moment, right story, right everything, so that you can get that offer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jason, thanks so much. You take care.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate you having me.